Good afternoon and welcome. It's 1 o'clock and welcome to the Board of Health meeting. This meeting is being held virtually by Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. And the concern is that of the chat function, which allows a separate conversation and is not recorded into public record. In response, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibits any member of the public from participating. So we're asking people that join the meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which activates the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participants return their microphone back to mute. Okay, let's get started. Scott, would you like to give us your update for this week?
Sure, good afternoon. COVID-wise, as far as Townwide goes, things are pretty stable. We've been, paying attention to everything across the state. Numbers continue to drop. Things are really in a much better place. We're actually on the EMS side, starting to replenish our supply and stock. Nursing home has begun allowing visitors outside, so that's a great sign. Starting to things get back to a little bit more of the new normal, if you could say. One of the things that between fire and police, public safety in general, have been receiving a lot of calls in regards to the parks and playgrounds. And I think maybe after Jim gives his update, we see if we can talk about that a little bit. But besides that, I would say actually town hall. I'm sorry, we do continue to work through that process to get everybody back in, all the employees back in, and have town hall fully staffed. That's roughly looking like that should happen probably in the next few weeks. Things are being put into place. The shields, face masks, hand sanitizer, some desk partitions for separation. That is all actually being put in place. But other than that, things are in relatively in good shape.
That's great. Yeah, I do have it on my list to talk about the playgrounds today after we hear from everyone. Excuse me. Jim, would you like to give us an update for this week, please?
Sure. So kind of building on what Scott said about the numbers, the 7-day weighted average up on the state website, that continues to come down on the number of cases testing positive. So it was really good to see. Last week, there were no new cases in Littleton. Again, that's very nice for us to see. What we're doing now is a lot of advising people on reopening matters. So any of the food services who want to reopen, they need to chat with Bridget about how they're going to do their table sittings. I'm working with Camp T, try to figure out how they can open Camp T. I think we've got their policies and procedures in pretty good shape with regards to the state's COVID information. So I think, based on our last meeting, they should be all set to go. I know John was meeting with, I don't know if he had a meeting with parents to do a presentation. So that's moving along nicely. We're still getting a handful, not even a handful, just a few complaints here or there about masks. We'll go out and respond to the complaints. What's helpful with those complaints, if people are having, are seeing things in town, is to let us know, when they were at the particular place, so that we can go by and visit those locations. What we'll do is we'll talk. It's more educational than anything else. It's hard to catch the violation in the act, if you will, unless it, of course, is the business, and then we'd have that conversation with the business. So again, we're just trying to handle the complaints through education. And then we're waiting to see what's going to happen with part 2 of phase 2. We're not sure what will open, but we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen there. So that would be my updates.
Thank you, Jim. What about team sports? I heard some towns having baseball. I'm not sure how that's happening here in Littleton. Do you guys know?
So there, in part 2, they have a youth sports, and essentially outdoor activities. They have youth sports, organized youth sports league and camps. That's how the camps get into it. So they can't have games, but they can go out and do practices and drills and that. And they've got to limit it to 12 people on the field, including the coaches. They can have multiple groups of 12 on the field, as long as they can keep the groups 20 feet apart. So, but they shouldn't be doing games or scrimmages.
Okay. How about you, Kevin? Did you have a Park and Rec meeting this week to update us on, or no? You're on mute, Kevin.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Get used to this. We did, and we specifically spoke about KMT. We spoke about that was the meeting last week, actually, because she couldn't get it on the in the newspaper or whatever it is to post it. So we're doing one Thursday, tomorrow.
Okay.
But that we did at the last meeting, we specifically spoke about playgrounds, and I think the consensus was that they don't have the staff to supervise it. And I mean, if there's a way to come up with somebody to staff it and supervise it, maybe we can talk about it. But and I did hear that Groton opened their pool to residents only.
Really?
But I think Acton is still keeping all their playgrounds closed.
Actually, well, if you read Jim's email, if you read all the way down all the threads, they're opening Nara Park because the park is staffed and can clean, sanitize the playground area, but that's the only playground they're opening. Yeah. Which made me think, well, maybe we can do that in Littleton, have the playground at the lake, but then we're limited with parking there. So it doesn't really work or help.
People could walk. There's a lot of folks that walk.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, you guys touched on the playgrounds and stuff, and when you look at like Boston opened all their playgrounds, parks, and water parks, and I know there's been several of the surrounding towns have opened their playgrounds, and that's without supervision. When you think about that and think about the if you were to open them and similar to town hall and everything else, at least post the signs, to exercise the social distancing and the masks, even with kids. As I know, some of the discussion has been about sanitizing some of the playgrounds, and when you think about it and look at some of the facts, most of them are all in some pretty sunny areas, and the sun does a better disinfectant than chemicals do. So I mean, depending on if whether or not you can somewhat control or at least recommend the areas. I mean, if Boston can open with the amounts and numbers that they have, it might be something to talk about and consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we could, I'd feel way better if we could staff it and supervise it.
I had sent around probably an hour or so before the meeting my response to the town manager and administrator in Boxborough. They're getting inquiries also about their park. So essentially what Scott says is, I kind of pulled down the CDC guidance. People are kind of wondering, how often it needs to be sanitized. That's the CDC guidance says, not disinfecting doesn't really have, the benefits you think, and cleaning it routinely. So, again, if you thought about having it open and let people, trust people to be responsible, and if you get lots and lots of complaints, I suppose you could always close it by posting the signs, telling people what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable allowing folks from out of town to utilize the playgrounds. And I don't know, I just think we got to be more careful.
I don't know how you're going to stop that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't, because a lot of that's paid with grant money. So you can't stop out of towners from using it. And as far as staffing it, Camp T and Park and Rec are trying to get just enough staff now to run the camp and beach. Nobody has staff that are going to babysit playgrounds. That's not going to happen.
I know. Well, maybe the one at the beach, if they can work that out, like Louise said.
I feel like we can open Castle in the Trees and the beach, and they're just going to have to come with their own wipes and, just do what they've been doing all along.
Honestly, when you look and if you've paid attention to, for example, the protests that have been going on, and Massachusetts in general, when you look at everybody, all of the different towns, be it in the city, even in the suburbs, the majority of the people continue to wear their face coverings and are being very responsible. I'd say probably 90 to 95% are, unlike other states across the country. And I think that speaks a lot for, obviously our numbers continue to drop, and the governor is really paying attention to that and not quick at opening everything up. Unlike other areas, but I think that's a benefit to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we have an obligation to be better safe than sorry, and try and get the kids back to school in the fall. And I think until we're getting really close to that, which I don't think we are, I don't think we have an obligation to provide them with a playground.
One thing I'd add to that is, I would say maybe as people are getting rambunctious, they are now visiting Castle in the Trees on a daily basis, and from most of the other playgrounds, and they are starting to play.
What's that? Oh, you broke up.
They are starting to play on the smaller playgrounds as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, should I ask? You want to put your opinion in on this?
No, I think as long as people in town or whoever comes to visit the playground or the beach are acting in a responsible, sensible way, there's no reason here to start putting brakes on. My only question is a technical one, and I guess it's more directed to Jim, and it was partially inspired by remarks that Scott was making, and that is that I can understand that you could, as it were, monitor the situation in Boston and around, and when you start putting together towns where the population density, the counts, the totals are pretty high. In other words, you have a large population. So if you're doing very, very well, you'll either see a decline, or depending on where you are, it stays pretty steady, just fluctuates. When it comes to a town like Littleton, given our population size, all you have to do is get 3 or 4 cases that you didn't see before, and all of a sudden it looks different. So statistically, so my question for Jim is that what is being used for us as an index that we're doing fine? I mean, the fact that our cases have not gone up is a good indication that nothing exciting is going on. But I'm interested in how you would monitor, you and Scott would monitor the situation you're thinking given our population size, while the governor is making decisions based on much larger population chunks. In other words, statistics, what he can follow is revealing. What we follow is basically lost in wash. So how do we maintain our responsibility properly using the right data sources? Am I being clear, Jim? I mean, was this too obtuse?
No, I think you've been clear. I just don't know that we'll have any numbers necessarily do that unless there's a little bit of an outbreak, and we can kind of trace it back to maybe there was a party at Castle of Trees and some kids went there, and that's, I mean, so unless we get something down to that level of detail, I guess my thought would be the only way we could probably not manage it, but observe it, if you will, is by complaints. By stopping by and seeing what people are doing. It's going to be kind of a soft, passive kind of, and again, if you're going to open them, I would definitely put the sign up, and probably one of the things you recommend that, in addition to people carrying their mask, maybe they carry their hand sanitizer with them too, because with the addition of the mask and being able to sanitize your hands after using the playground, you're probably doing about as good as you can do in an outdoor setting to protect yourself.
Absolutely agree. I wasn't asking about the methods for it's more of how do you grapple with a small town.
Unless you see that, like I said, unless you see that little cluster pop up, it's probably hard to get a sense of it.
I got it. Thanks.
Yep.
One question on, putting up the signage and stuff like that, if the park were to, playground was to open again. And I know they put the porta potty there and stuff are typical on a typical season. Wonder, I don't know what the option is if they could actually get one of those, like a hand washing station. What are your thoughts on that, Jim? Is that, are you better off bringing your own hand sanitizer and not worrying about something like that?
It's another thing to manage because they have a small reservoir of water and paper towels and the hand sanitizer. I'm kind of concerned with, if it were supervised, that'd be great because then you could at least keep an eye on it. But where it's kind of left out there by himself, I'm concerned about not being managed well, damaged, vandalized. Yeah, my thought is the hand sanitizer. If people brought hand sanitizer with them to the park, that probably would be a great addition to the face masks at the park.
Got it. That makes sense.
It does make sense. Okay, Lisa, do you want to weigh in on the park situation, or are you all set?
She appears to me to be muted.
She is, yeah, you're muted, Lisa. So maybe she's all set. Does someone want to make a motion about the parks and playgrounds?
I make a motion that the Board of Health, is it a permit or simply do we recommend the opening of the parks in town in accordance with the guidelines provided by the Commonwealth and by the local officer for the Board of Health? Would that cover? That would allow signs to go up and monitoring to go on and reminding people of their own responsibility, as indicated by the remarks already made.
I could certainly have that conversation with Park and Rec about getting that stuff in place.
Yep.
Is there a second? Lisa?
She's still on mute, and so is Kevin. Kevin just, yeah.
Kevin? He's probably.
Lisa is well, she was unmuted, but I believe she had to drop off.
Oh boy.
And Kevin's still muted.
Kevin?
No, I'm not going to second.
You're not going to second. Okay, so we can't open. Unfortunately. Okay, we can try again next week when we have more members. Okay.
Can we find out what, this is not a popularity contest. Kevin, do you have an objection in particular or a modification you want to make, or you just think we're not ready for it?
You're muted, Kevin.
I think we're not ready for it. I think if it were staffed and supervised, I'd be comfortable with it. But especially if it's going to be open to all the other towns, it's just not safe.
Okay. So the only other thing I have left on my agenda, my list of things, is meeting minute approvals. Does anybody else have any other topics? Here's Lisa again.
I'm not prepared for the
Sorry, I
minutes.
couldn't hear you guys, so I had to leave. I thought I'd leave and come back.
I'm not prepared for the minutes.
Oh, Lisa, can we do that again about the playgrounds?
I didn't hear it.
Did you have any comment about opening the playgrounds?
I think with the precautions and signage up, I think it would be fine to open it. They're not staffed anyway before. They were never staffed before. So I don't have a problem opening them up.
Okay, so Mike has made a motion. Do you want to second it?
I'll make a motion to open the playgrounds and the parks with caution and the signage. And I guess obviously if there was a spike or some kind of connection to a spike, what is that? The trace contacting and came from a playground, that they be closed again?
Mike already made a motion, so I just need
All
a
right.
second.
Okay, second.
Sorry.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah,
Did he say
no.
all that? Did he talk about the cautionary and
Yes.
signage and stuff like that?
He was very thorough in his motion. So let's do the roll call. Kevin,
I'm Baker now.
Lisa,
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike,
Mike Selden, yes.
and Louise Nichols, yes. Okay. So who would do that? The police go down and open it up? Do you know,
Let me
Scott?
talk to Alicia during the meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Great. Thanks a lot. Jim, will you give her signs to post and?
Well, we can talk about what gets posted, and it would be nice to get something that was a little more weather durable. So we can talk about what might be appropriate to put up at the park.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, now all I have, oh no, Janet says that I can wait till Tuesday for the meeting minutes.
Yes,
Scott, go ahead.
I got to run. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank
Scott?
Bye. Anybody else have any other items besides the meeting minutes?
Janet, that horse farm inspection, did you get any response from Scott or Conscom from that at all?
Janet?
I have not heard back from either of them yet.
Janet obviously is having audio issues.
She said did she say she hasn't heard back from them yet?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
This is Mike Selden, just real quick. A couple of meetings ago, I suggested a program that we stand behind a program to do some kind of tracing and monitoring when people start commuting back and forth. I just want to close the loop on that. I had a conversation with the folks at the Harvard Center for whatever. They're doing a lot of statistical work for the Commonwealth and some other sources. And in brief, the resources just aren't there, first of all, to do that kind of testing and evaluation. And the second, if the resources that are available are being focused on higher density populations where the threat remains nearly constant and has to be monitored. And everyone's sort of like they were enthusiastic about it, but it's going to have to take maybe third, fourth, or maybe fifth place on how money gets spent, because for obvious reasons, we're still waiting for the other foot to drop in the fall when we get both the standard flu as well as what we've got now. So I'm just collecting notes just in case, and that's it. And thanks, Jim, for paying attention. I know you have a full brief, and I greatly appreciate your interest in it. And I'll keep you up to date on the latest and greatest.
I'd love to see how that worked out, but yeah, I'm sure it all comes down to resources.
I heard Littleton got like $1 million from the CARES Act. We should hop on that and try and get some resources. Maybe if it's even part of the 2021 budget.
Well, Jim wanted some of that money.
We just
Jim?
want to make sure it was set aside in case we need it for the contact tracing in the fall.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, that will be, the money we got was for fiscal year 2020.
Right.
So,
If we can get 70 grand and make a deal with Quest Diagnostics to do the testing, that'd be amazing. Especially if we get keep the nurses on staff to handle it.
okay, we'll figure that out. Okay, anything else? Is there any, Janet or Dave, is there anyone is there any participants or anybody in the waiting room that has a question, or I don't even know if anybody's here today.
Too nice out.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. That might be all we have for today. So our next meeting.
Town elections Saturday.
Oh, wait. Is Joe Layden still there? Joe Leiden?
Yes.
Could he come on and tell us how town meeting went?
Hey, Louise, that emerald is blinding us.
He's on.
Sorry. Hi, Joe.
Hello. I was going to say, you got Mark there. He could give the whole lowdown. But town meeting went really well. It went off without a hitch. Had people on town meeting floor or one person comment on how well organized it was. And we were done in an hour and a half.
Wow.
So, I lost. I expected we were going to be out by like 12:30. But it went pretty quick. And, I think both the town clerk, also the work that LCTV did along with our emergency personnel really, and Jim, of course, really set us up for success in all the detailed preparations that they did.
Were there many people there that, what was the issue, that had a temperature and were set aside in a separate seating area?
I'm not aware that even became an issue. I mean, essentially we had about 130 people there. Okay. Plus or minus, I'm not sure of the count, basically just going off of registered votes. But we had place set aside, and there was plenty of space for people to get even spread out a little further. So I'm not aware of any issues that had arisen.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Joe about town meeting?
This is Mike. I went to the town meeting and I couldn't do the count. I obviously don't have the equipment to do it, but the demographics of this meeting were very different than the regular town meeting. Just in other words, there was a relatively younger crowd. So if you use this as your index of how Littleton is allegedly aging at some rate X, you wouldn't necessarily see it. It looks like this is a slightly younger crowd. So there was an impact of the attendance. That's in my view. And I don't think anything would have changed, just that the number of people and the feeling of. I think the other thing that helped a great deal was not just the number of folks from Scott's command and from the police, but also the way they distributed themselves dynamically during the course of the meeting. I think there are a lot of lessons learned from that one. It says something about local policing, local persuasion, engagement to make something like this work. So I think there are a lot of lessons learned, positive ones, and I hope that Joe took a lot of notes.
Okay, all sounds good. I'm glad it went well. Okay, I think that's all we have for today. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Everybody, please read up your minutes for Tuesday's meeting. And is there a second to adjourn?
I'll second.
I'll second. Go ahead,
Okay,
Kevin.
so let's go through the roll call. Kevin,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Lisa,
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Louise Nichols, yes. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Good to see you guys.
Bye,
Yep,
Jim.
Short,
Bye.
sweet nights.
Yeah. Is your lunch over, Lisa? She's gone. Thank you.